everyone. I'm Terrell Sweat, State Government Affairs for Johnson & Johnson. It's wonderful to be here with you and share this day in life sciences with all of you. I'm also delighted to introduce our next two speakers, Leslie Stolz and Dr. David Beers, who are impactful leaders in the pharmaceutical sector. Leslie is Vice President, Early Innovation Partnering at J&J Innovation, and Dr. Beers is the President and CEO of Halia Therapeutics. Both Leslie and Dr. Beers live and breathe drug development. In this session, Dr. Beers will have a conversation with Leslie to explore the latest developments in pharmaceutical innovation. A little bit more about Leslie before we get rolling. Leslie leads identification, incubation, due diligence, negotiation, execution, and onboarding for partnerships in external innovation. She is responsible for a wide range of deal-making solutions, such as research collaborations, licensing options, venture investments, new company formations, and more, all aimed to create partnerships with promising early-stage innovators. Leslie has more than 25 years' experience in the biopharma industry. She has a PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Rochester and did her postdoc research in biochem at Harvard Medical School. Please join me in giving a warm Utah welcome to Leslie and Dr. Beers.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to have Leslie here. We're very fortunate to have somebody who really has an opportunity to make such a big impact in the world working with Johnson & Johnson, and we're excited to welcome her here to Utah. We're here to talk a little bit about pharmaceutical innovation and what that means. I think it means a lot of things to a lot of people, and we our industry is an interesting industry. It's unique. And we are really driven, the beating heart of our industry is the science behind the innovations that we bring forward. But we try to innovate through the whole industry and how we deliver the drugs to patients and how we do clinical trials, how we sell them. And so the innovation really plays a role across the whole spectrum of what we try to do in the pharmaceutical world. So I know that both Leslie and I are passionate about what we do. We love being involved in an industry that makes a difference in people's lives. I tell everybody that from a very young age, the year I was born, my grandfather was diagnosed with colon cancer and died very fast. And so I never had a relationship with my grandpa because of cancer, and that put a real imprint on my life. And it actually motivated me. I have papers from when I was young in school saying I wanted to be a scientist and cure cancer, and so it's been something I've thought about for a long time, and it's a real passion for me. And I know that Leslie feels very similarly, and she and I have got to meet each other a few times. We were just laughing backstage that we usually run into each other in very strange places. So this is it's
different countries,
and different conferences. But it's nice to have you here. Thank you so much for coming. Maybe just to start, we got a little brief introduction about what you do at J&J, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about innovation at J&J, and then we can talk more generally about innovation in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, thanks, David. So J&J Innovation is a business unit inside Johnson & Johnson that is really set up to put together or put in place relationships for external innovation, what we call external innovation. It means we're bringing things in from the outside. And we do that, our world is mostly in the pharma business, but we work as well finding innovation, finding external opportunities in our med tech business as well. And back in the day, before we spun out consumer, we used to do that as well. J&J Innovation is made up of 3 different business units. It is our venture investing arm, JJDC, and they've been investing for over 50 years. and have put billions and billions of dollars to work. We also have our J-Labs incubator business, where we have well over 900 companies that are a part of the family. They are either current or alumni companies. And then we have our innovation centers, which is what I'm a part of, these are our deal-making teams. And in each case, these the whole idea between J&J or around J&J Innovation is that we're embedded regionally. And so we have people on the West Coast, we have people on the East Coast, we have people in Europe, and we have people in Asia Pacific. And so the thought about that is that we have the opportunity to really get to know the academic institutions, the venture investors, the startup companies, and because when we meet a company, it might not be exactly when we're ready to do a deal, but with the regional engagement, we get to know them and we have conversations and we talk to them about what do we need, J&J, in order for the technology to be ready for perhaps our investment or our collaboration. And as part of the incubator business, we actually coach people. The companies get what they call a J-PAL because everything at J&J has a J. But that J-PAL is usually someone who's from the R&D group. And that person is there to answer questions, to make connections, and to help the company grow, and perhaps help the company not make the mistakes that a lot of startups make. So we try really hard to pull those three levers: investment, incubation, and collaboration, in order to bring really interesting and exciting science into our pipeline, but also to help them develop their science as quickly as possible to get to the patients.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And, you know, J&J really is, I don't know how many employees worldwide, but it's over 100,000, right?
It is over 100,000.
It's really large company. And to have a large company like that be so good at innovation is kind of unique. I don't think there's a lot of other companies, certainly in other industries, that are that big that can maintain that focus and that really, it's part of the DNA of J&J. And can you tell us where that came from? I know that the J&J has a famous credo that they started with, and I think everybody at J&J is required to like memorize it or learn it. But can you tell us a little bit about that and how that's really been part of the founding of the company from the very beginning?
Yeah, so you know the credo, it does drive some of the innovation because the number one thing that's important for J&J employees is the patients and the providers who take care of them and the families, okay? So that is our North Star. And then the next one is the employees, and then our communities, and then should we do the first three correctly, the shareholders should get a fair return. So that's what the credo is, and some people read it and they say, oh, this can't really be true. They don't really pay attention to this. But honest to goodness, we do, right? It is, it's something we have to judge our groups every year by the credo. Yeah. And are we fulfilling it? And innovation is important because that is what gets solutions to patients. And so I think, if I think about how we do it, part of it is that we are open to bringing in a good idea from anywhere, right? And the important thing, though, about being able to bring in the best science from the outside is having super smart scientists who can tell the difference, right? And so we've kept up our R&D, where a lot of big companies have been sort of pulling back on R&D. We have continued to hold a very strong R&D group in order to be able to tell what is the best innovation coming in from the outside so that we can use it and put our muscle behind it to bring it to patients.
Yeah. No, I think that's that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's why J&J is able to do what they do. I tell everybody, for me, my credo is good science is good medicine is good business. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is the same
It
thing.
flows. That
Yeah.
if you do the first things right, then if you really understand the biology and the science behind what you're trying to target, you can turn that into a medicine. That medicine's you can make a business out of that. So
Yeah.
so getting that first part right is really, really important. So I know that you served previously as the head of the J Labs in
Yeah.
San Francisco, and tell us what that was like. And I don't know if everybody knows about J Labs, but tell us how that all started. And it's a unique thing, and I know there's a lot of people trying to, and in fact, here we're trying to start some incubators here. I love the concept. I think it makes a lot of sense. But tell us a little bit about how J Labs and what we need to do to get a J Labs here in Salt Lake as well. So that would be that'd be a great thing for us. So.
Yeah, so it all started really where there was the woman who's the head of Global J Labs, a woman by the name of Melinda Richter, and she started her own incubator in San Jose, in the South Bay in California. And her whole concept was, how can we bring healthcare solutions forward faster? How can we make it easier for entrepreneurs? And she really just wanted to find a way that an entrepreneur with an idea, could start a company and could put it on the credit card, rent a bench, rent a desk, and have a bunch of equipment there that they needed. And so she did that in California, in San Jose. And one of our leaders in our R&D site in La Jolla said, we should be doing this. And honestly, it came out of the fact that we had extra space. We had 40,000 square feet that wasn't being used because of a downsizing, right? It was after the 2008 downturn. And so we created this space where we bought a bunch of equipment. We had a bunch of equipment left over, but we bought some new equipment. And the idea was you can rent everything from one bench and one desk to an entire little suite of benches and desks. And that was to help reduce the burden of getting your company started and getting your work done. And so that started down in La Jolla, and then we opened another one in South San Francisco, and they were successful enough that the whole idea behind it was no strings attached, which meant that we just charged rent, and we didn't require equity. We didn't require them to have anything to do with us other than paying us rent. But it was also true that we tended to accept companies that were working on things that we were interested in and that were on strategy. And so really the whole idea behind it was how can we get a better view into the innovation that's happening? Yeah. And how can we help it go faster? And so it's this continuing theme of trying to make sure that we can bring solutions to patients. So at this point, we have South San Francisco, and we have La Jolla, and we have Houston at the Texas Medical Center, and we have Washington, D.C., and we have New York, and we have Toronto, and we have one in Belgium, and then we have one in Shanghai. We also are not doing any more bricks and mortar.
Okay.
However, what we are doing is we just recently signed an agreement with the Economic Development in Shanghai, where we are helping them build theirs.
Oh.
And so we have all the protocols, we have the SOPs, we have a lot of what we do is building community, and building community means having events. It's kind of a marketing department as well, but it's to get everybody together so that there can be productive collisions around science and company forming and all that kind of stuff. Right. And so that's the direction that we're going now, because we've been told we can't build any more bricks and mortar. But we still want to help communities like Singapore, like Utah, think about how to build an innovation ecosystem themselves.
Oh, that's very exciting. Well, hopefully we can we can pursue that and partner and build something here that would be great. Well, I want to pivot a little bit and just talk more broadly about. So, Leslie, you're in a position where you see a lot of stuff, right? I can only imagine how many hundreds of new therapeutics and new approaches you see every month, but it's a lot. I know that.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So you have a unique perspective on innovation and what pharmaceutical innovations really are. So, it's I think everyone has kind of a different definition of what that really means. But to me, there's a real difference between something being novel and something being innovative. They're not exactly the same thing. And novelty is, mine's different than somebody else's. But what to you, really, when you're looking at all of these new technologies and new products and opportunities, what stands out at you where you say, that's something innovative? What is it that makes a difference there that you're really looking for to bring in something new and innovative to J&J?
So a lot of it today actually hinges around the word transformational, right? So what do we see today that can be transformational for patients, or transformational for our industry, or transformational for our business, right? And that is sort of where we go today. So it has to be on strategy. So I do see a lot. We actually, we review, so globally, we review over 800 opportunities a year.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's a lot.
And that is, and just in our region, which is, my region is West North America, which is west of the Mississippi River. We usually do about 350 to 400. And some of them are very quick opportunities that we look at, and some of them we really dig into. But the transformational is really important. And, Joe talked a lot about AI, and AI is honestly, it's transformational for our industry. He talked a lot about transformational for healthcare. My goodness, we use it to find the patients, right? Meet them where they're at. It's helped us immensely with decentralized clinical trials. It's helped us with our supply chain. I mean, it's incredible how much we've thrown it into supply chain. So that's innovation in a way that, it's not science, but boy, does it bring the science forward faster. But so transformational, I think, is the key today. Yeah. And that's going to be really important for the medicines of tomorrow. And part of it is because of legislation, right? The Inflation Reduction Act, Europe is also putting legislation forward that will really change our ability to continue to fund innovation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and I think obviously for small companies, it's always been the ability to raise money has really been linked to the idea that there's really no cap on things in the future for what the economic opportunities are, and that's really why people are willing to take the risk to invest in these very early stage risky things, and so it is changing things quite a bit, and I sense, and obviously, this is what I spend all day, every day thinking about is how do I deliver medicines to patients and make a transformational impact on them. There is some interesting things happening in our world right now where we're shifting away from the old mentality of just having an acute, we're going to capture this patient, treat him for a short period of time, and then get the next one, right? But what we're seeing in the world today is a lot more chronic diseases that are impacting people from a lot longer than we used to. I mean, I grew up in the cancer world, and so, if you could keep people alive for a year, you're doing pretty well, right, in the old days. And nowadays that just doesn't cut it anymore, and we're starting to see how these impacts for a long period of time. So there's a big thing happening in our world in the pharmaceutical world right now with these GLP-1 drugs that have really come on the scene and have done more than just type 2 diabetes, which was really kind of their initial focus, but really now, just yesterday, Eli Lilly got approved for obesity, just specifically to get reimbursed back for weight loss. And you're starting to see indications that economically are very, very different than things that we used to think about. I think as small companies, we like to think about rare diseases where you can charge a lot of money for a very small number of patients. But how do you think about and how does J&J think about specifically about a disease like, weight loss? There's 1 billion people on this planet that are overweight. 1 billion people.
Right.
We've never faced anything like that in our history, where that is this, and so all of the things that we used to think about kind of get thrown out the window when you start thinking about markets like that, and now there's a big push for longevity drugs and keeping people alive long. How do you wrap your head around that, and what is that? But the opportunity to make a transformational impact is there, but it's still murky in terms of how that all plays out. What's J&J's thinking in terms of, I'm sure that every pharmaceutical company wants to be part of this, right? It's like there's a real opportunity to make a difference there. What are you guys thinking on, with markets like that?
Well, yeah. So we've been historically, and our major markets have been cancer and immunology, and now even more so neuroscience, right? We were in diabetes. We've had a long history in diabetes. And, in terms of obesity, we haven't really talked about it. We know that it's a big market. The problem is you don't want to be third or fourth or fifth or sixth to the market. You want to really make a difference. And so where is the science taking us next? That's the big question.
Yep.
Right? And I would say that we're still thinking about that big question for that particular area. For oncology, we've sort of attacked it in a disease sort of area by disease area, and we feel like for hematological cancers, we've made a really big difference in patients' lives, and we're going to continue to try to make a really big difference in patients' lives. We love the concept of cell therapy because it does, it's almost a cure in some patients, right? And so now we're really looking at following the science for how can you make that effective in solid tumors? How can we start to really make a difference in solid tumors? And what other hematological cancers can we do better with for those patients? And so we follow down that trajectory. And sometimes it includes making bets on really early science. And sometimes, we tend to sit on the sidelines a little bit until that early science has gotten a little farther. But when it comes to cell therapy, that we've really, we made a bet, and we're going to keep going after it.
Yeah.
For immunology, we're learning so much. The big talk about immunology these days is the work that has been published using cell therapy for lupus.
Yep.
And that's really exciting too. And that also, it makes you sort of shift your thinking on how you can attack autoimmune diseases. And so, we are definitely still all in on autoimmune and immune-related chronic diseases like IBD, ulcerative colitis, psoriasis, other rheumatology, and GI disorders that affect people's lives for so long. And some people think that people are well controlled on the TNF drugs, and they're not.
Yeah, you look at the data, it's like 30%.
Yeah, it's and we don't want to. The other thing that's really important when we think about precision medicine is how do we predict who's going to respond and who's not? And we're no good at that yet, right? So we're hoping that some of these new technologies with next generation sequencing and RNA-seq and AI can help find ways to be able to predict better and find patients better so that we don't waste their time on the wrong drug. And then I think I'll just focus in a little bit on neuroscience because it's been so neglected. And the biology today, we know so much more than we did just even 10 years ago. And unfortunately, it takes a long time to translate that biology into medicine, right? But boy, do we need solutions for people that have neurodegenerative diseases. I mean, 2 of my friends died of ALS this year. 2 in 1 year, right? ALS, Parkinson's, Huntington's, Alzheimer's, right? So we are all in on that as well, and we're really excited about some of the new biology that we think could make a really big difference. And then also, I don't really like the term neuropsychiatric, but we'll just, depression, schizophrenia. Again, we're learning more about the biology that we believe we can interrogate, which is also pretty exciting. And there's new stuff coming out all the time, which is also, I'm really happy that the small companies, the startups and the entrepreneurs have gotten money to fund the work that they're doing, because we can only do so much ourselves. And then we're scouring the earth for things that really look exciting.
So with you seeing all these new innovations and these new opportunities, what are the things that you're seeing in terms of, I think there's always going to be a role for small molecules. They're not ever going to go away, and we certainly have established, large protein biologics. They're here to stay. They're, if anything, growing. But there's a lot of new things. You mentioned cell therapy. What do you think about like the mRNA technology that was used for the COVID vaccines? What's the future for that? Do you see that that's going to move into other areas? Is it still a lot of unknowns out there? But what do you see on that front?
I think the excitement around RNA technologies is really because you can interrogate targets you can't interrogate with small and large molecules, right? I mean, there is. Just trying to think of it. It's biological software.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so cool, right? You can turn up protein production, you can turn down protein production, you can fix things that are wrong. And so there's so much possibility. So, and what I think is really exciting, the fact that we've gotten the COVID-19 vaccines just pushed everybody to saying, okay, this stuff is actually safe, right? Fantastic, because we know we had 20 years of research where everybody was afraid to use it in vaccines because vaccines have to be super safe. They can't cost a lot of money, right? So now I think that if we combine the RNA medicine, the concept of them, with synthetic biology, I think there's so much promise for attacking diseases that we haven't really been able to go after. The real key is delivery, right?
Yep.
And so that takes us to nanomedicine.
Yeah, that's right.
That we were talking about, and David warned me that he wanted to talk about these things. And it's really true. I mean, we've been using nanoparticles for years, right? We've also been using RNA-based medicines for years now, but they were generally rare diseases. And now, can we get both into the mainstream? There's a lot that we have to worry about. There's a lot of technology that has to be fixed. Can we get particles that are directed to cell types or to organs, not the liver, right? I think we can. We're starting to see that, which I think is super exciting. It's the same thing. It's in the same idea that the early innovators for AAV, tissue-directed AAV, we're now having early innovators for tissue-directed nanoparticles. And even just this week, I was at the BioUtah partnering conference and talked to a lot of people about nanoparticles and delivery of message, basically, to different organs and different tissues. And there's still problems we have to solve. Injecting them systemically, are they going to be immunogenic? Are they going to get chewed up? Are they going to get stuck someplace they're not supposed to get stuck? Are they going to fall apart because of shear forces, right? There's a lot of physics, I think, that we have to work on. But I'm super excited that there are people working together on this, and you're bringing together physicists and biologists and chemists and tech people, data scientists, all to solve these problems. I mean, there are also now, people have found ways to kind of mask nanoparticles so they don't get immunogenic. Now there are some people that are working on biopolymers. And in the same way that you have small molecule companies or antibody companies who are using AI and machine learning to sort of sift through what kind of molecules should we make, right? So for, let's just say, antibody discovery, they run an algorithm to say, here are some sequences. We want to get a new, better binder that has species cross-reactivity and produces in large amounts and all that kind of stuff, right? Multifactorial optimization. And so they do it once, and then they produce a bunch, right? The top hits, and then they test them, and then they feed it back into their algorithm, and they keep refining it, right? Same thing for these biopolymers. It's so interesting and exciting that they can do the same thing, and they can enrich some of these polymers for an organ over another. And I mean, with that, you can do things for, say, kidney disease or lung disease. I mean, imagine if we could actually treat fibrosis in the lungs. Anyway.
Yeah. No,
I'm babbling.
Oh, that's exciting stuff. And, I think that's, we see these technologies and it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of innovation really has the potential, real innovations can be transformational. And that's, I think we see some of these, there's big sea changes happening in the way that we used to think about things. I remember when I first saw the RNA technology, I said, that's never going to work, right? I mean, that's just too, that'll work in the lab. There's no way that's going to work in people, right? But I was wrong. So, and now, I think that there's a lot of exciting stuff happening there, and how we direct those molecules to the right places. I think that's the next big breakthroughs that are going to happen, and we're seeing it now.
Yeah.
So I was trained by a guy that he's famous for saying, there's no bad drugs, just bad clinical trials. So I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's he won an award and gave this big lecture, and that was the title of his talk. And to his point, I think you mentioned a little earlier, how are we being innovative in trying to find the right patients to treat? Because we know, you mentioned TNF-alpha drugs, they've been widely economically successful, and for a percentage of patients, they have a real impact and change people's lives, but there's still far too many people that get treated with drugs that have no benefit at all, and maybe just get toxicity and no benefit, no real advantages. So what do you see in terms of innovations on that front, and how we can make, we've been talking about precision medicine and personalized medicine, whatever we call it, the new flavor of the day, but trying to match the right patients with the right drugs. Are we making progress there? Is there innovations happening? And you mentioned AI. What do you see happening on that front?
I think we are making progress. And we'll start from the easiest, which is finding the patients. And finding them in places that are hard to find them, and equitable, health equity, right? So really taking the time and the trouble to actually locate patients that represent our population of disease. So we're making progress with that. And part of that has to do with using data sciences to find them. And then using data sciences as well to shut down the clinical sites that aren't finding them, right? And so stop wasting money. That's a sort of simple area. When it comes to actually deciding what drug the patient needs that will help, the reason that machine learning is so important for this is because we have so much more data. And with the omics revolution and everything that we can collect and everything that we're learning about disease processes and molecular pathways and what things turn on and turn off, that is now able to be interrogated so that we can find patients that will respond to drug. We're not there everywhere yet, right? But it's a huge focus. And then so diagnostics are challenging because, for some things they're great, right? Because if we do a diagnostic that matches a diseased patient to, say, the drug that we have in development right now, nipocalimab, which is an FcRn drug, well, that's fantastic. That means that, we do that diagnostic and they get that drug. It's also true that they can't get the drug without the diagnostic, okay? So I think that the ability to interrogate and organize that data is going to make a huge difference. And we have the ability as well to take samples, clinical samples that we've collected, give them to we've done all the tests on them. We can take the data, we can give it to a company who's really good at organizing data, or at least maybe has a clinical hypothesis on how to identify the patients that will respond, and test it. And you know what? They test it really fast. And we can give them the data blind, and then they don't know who's responded and who's not, and they can tell us. And this is really important because then it helps us, then we can put it into a trial.
Yep.
So that's why, to me, the machine learning is so important, and is helping us interrogate the data, because beforehand, you were depending on guesswork, or you were depending on your own hypothesis. But as Joe said, it thinks outside the box, and it can make connections that you don't necessarily think of, and then you have to validate them.
Yeah.
But the data's there.
No, I think that's right. So maybe you could give us your opinion about the regulatory side of things and how innovation plays in. My experience has been, the FDA is open and always open to have conversations about new ideas and new designs and new clinical trials and using new all of those things. But it's one thing to have a conversation about it, and it's another thing to accept a brand new way of developing a drug. And I worry that our regulatory infrastructure has gotten quite large. It's the FDA is a large organization, and we're trying to be better all the time when we bring drugs to them and say, we don't want to treat everybody. We want to treat these people, and here's how we're going to find them. It's certainly not your area. It's not what you focus on, but just from what you know of what goes on at J&J, what's your sense of is the FDA a partner in innovation, or is it a hindrance in innovation? And what can we do to change that? And like I said, it's not your area of expertise, but I'm sure J&J certainly thinks about this stuff.
Yeah, we do. And I came in sort of in the middle of the FDA conversation this morning. Sadly, I really wanted to see his presentation. Excuse me. I think that we have the privilege of having the experience with them and the relationships. And so we have those conversations often.
Yep.
The smaller companies don't often have that privilege and have that relationship. And so we do look at the FDA as our partner. And we, whenever possible, will work with them and bring them with us in particular. And I will say it is one of it's one of the questions that we ask a lot in diligence when we're looking at somebody's opportunity is, if someone's getting ready or if they've filed an IND and they're getting ready to run their phase 1, have you talked to the agency? And usually they'll say, well, we sent them a letter and we didn't get anything back. I'm like, what you find out is that people at the agency, they like to have conversations.
Sure, yeah.
They like to be brought along. If you bring them along, they help you solve the problem in the way that they can.
Yeah.
And so we definitely see them as a partner. But it is harder when you don't have that deep relationship based on years of working with them. It's also, it's really interesting. And I will say that, J&J has a medical device business and we have a pharma business. They don't often go together, but they should. And so we now have an interventional oncology business where we really are focusing on the combination of device and pharma. And talk about having to bring the FDA with us. It is really challenging because the pharma people ask certain questions and the med device people ask certain questions. And there's been a lot of turnover in certain areas in the agency. And so we will have questions that we think are completely irrelevant, and yet they're still asking them and we have to figure them out. But they are a partner.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right, and I think your comment about it is one of the struggles of being a small company when you don't have a operating history with the FDA. The FDA are people,
right.
And so they have memories and they remember things about your interactions and it's difficult to build those relationships, but it's so critical in bringing them along as a partner. They should be a partner with you. They shouldn't be an adversary and shouldn't be thought that way. But I think, unfortunately, what happens a lot of times as a small company is we don't have access to the same access and expertise
right.
On the regulatory side. And that's something that I think is one of the big challenges of operating in your world versus my world, where I
right.
spend a lot of my time.
Right.
Thankfully, I've been there many times and had a lot of conversations. And in certain places, the FDA, they know who I am, but it's because of a long history, right?
And it's okay that they know who you are.
It's okay. I'm happy that they know who I am. That's right. Yeah. So I guess to end up, we're almost out of time, but I think the U.S. has had United States has really been the driver of innovation in our world for many, many years. And I think it's largely because that's where the market is, and the economics of developing drugs here are better than any other place in the world. And there's things changing in the world now. I mean, China's become a market that is, 10 years ago, I would have never guessed it would be where it is today. And there's challenges there, and access to the market in China is not the same as it is in other places. But I guess as we start to think about, the world's a lot smaller than it used to be, and accessing innovation and working with other countries to develop drugs is something that, literally 10 years ago as a small company, I would never thought about it. I think about it now. I think that Australia's done a great job. They've kind of streamlined early clinical development in a way that not only little companies, but even big companies go there to do early clinical trials a lot because of what they've done. And I think a lot of other countries are looking at it and saying, hey, we could do that too. And what's your sense of in 10 years from now, how is where's the U.S. going to be in terms of the center of innovation? Are you going to see more stuff happening all over the world? And what does that look like if you were to predict? And I know it's, predictions are hard, right? Especially about the future, but,
Well,
yeah.
I will say that probably my biggest concern with innovation in the United States is actually the fact that the legislation that's been put in place is discouraging us from innovating. It is pushing us to the large market diseases.
Yep.
And it is pushing us away from doing clinical trials in some of the small niche diseases in order to get the data that we need to plow into the large markets. So that does concern me, and I think we are going to see an impact on how the U.S. does innovation. What's also interesting is that there's really great science all over the world. Mm-hmm. Now, the fascinating thing about Asia is that, China used to be all about Me Too's. Mm-hmm. And they are now just diving headlong into truly new and transformational science, as interestingly is South Korea. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of now innovative science coming out of South Korea. Whereas before, it was, again, Me Too's. Mm-hmm. It was the second, third, fourth generation because that was easier. But each of these countries has put a lot of money into their scientists to get them to do the first-in-class or best-in-class type of discovery. So I actually think that we'll see a bit more democratization of where the science is coming from. A couple of things we'll have to figure out, though, is how to get money in and out of China.
Yep. Yeah.
Because that has definitely stunted our ability to partner in China
Yep.
At the moment with the current political situation.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Well, I think we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming to Utah, and hopefully you're a frequent visitor. Come back and see us often. And if you get a chance, Leslie has the best business cards. I've gotten thousands of business cards in my life. I remember her business card, so if you get a chance to ask her for a business card, it's awesome. So
I don't know if I have that many with me.
You probably don't have enough, but thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, everybody.